At 73, I bought myself a $186 blue coat. I loved it. I could afford it. But before I even got home, I had decided to return it. Not because I needed the money, because after nearly 50 years of putting everyone else first, spending $186 on myself made me feel selfish. That evening, my son asked me, "Mom, who exactly are you feeling guilty toward?" I couldn't answer, and that frightened me, because I was 73 years old, and I still didn't know how to enjoy my own life without feeling guilty. My name is Diane Parker. I'm 73 years old, and I live in Columbus, Ohio. For most of my adult life, enjoyment came after responsibility. After the bills were paid, after dinner was cooked, after the children had what they needed, after my husband was taken care of, after my parents were checked on, after the house was clean, there was always an after. And for a long time that made sense. My husband Richard and I married young. We had 2 boys, Michael and Daniel. When they were little, money was tight. Not frighteningly tight, but tight enough that we paid attention. Every dollar seemed to have a destination before it reached our bank account. Mortgage, groceries, electricity, school supplies, car repairs, shoes, dentist bills. Something always needed replacing. I worked as a payroll clerk. Richard worked full-time too. We weren't careless with money. We couldn't afford to be. So I became very good at deciding what could wait. Usually, I could wait. If Michael needed new shoes, he got them. Mine lasted another season. If Daniel needed something for school, we bought it. If I saw a dress I liked, I told myself I already had enough. I didn't resent this. That's important. Those sacrifices were part of raising a family. I loved my sons. I loved Richard. And in those years, being careful really was necessary. The problem came later. Our circumstances changed. My habits didn't. The boys grew older. Our income improved. Eventually, the mortgage was paid. There were fewer emergencies. We had more breathing room. But whenever I wanted something for myself, the same voice appeared. "You don't need that. That's too expensive. The money could be used for something better." Richard noticed long before I did. Sometimes we'd be shopping, and I'd stop to look at something. A sweater, a pair of shoes, a handbag. He'd say, "Buy it," and I would immediately answer, "I don't need it." He'd laugh. "You're allowed to buy things you don't desperately need." I'd shake my head. It would be a waste. That word mattered to me. Waste. Spending money on something necessary was responsible. Spending money on something I simply enjoyed felt wasteful. Over time, I became proud of how little I needed. I didn't realize I was turning self-denial into a virtue. Richard and I celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary when I was in my early 50s. He wanted to take me to a nice restaurant, a genuinely nice one. I looked at the menu online. That was a mistake. I saw the prices. I immediately suggested somewhere cheaper. Richard refused. Diane, we've been married 30 years. I know. I think we can buy dinner. We can buy dinner somewhere else. He just looked at me. We're going. So we went. The restaurant was beautiful. White tablecloths, candles, the kind of place where the waiter doesn't rush you. I remember enjoying the food, but I also remember calculating. I looked at my meal and thought about how many groceries the same amount of money could buy. Richard ordered dessert. I told him I didn't want any. Then I ate half of his. On the drive home, he smiled and said, "You know, you're allowed to enjoy something without turning it into math." I laughed. At the time, I thought he was teasing me. Years later, I understood what he meant. I didn't know how to receive pleasure without calculating its cost. Not only the financial cost, the moral cost. If I enjoyed something, part of me needed to prove that I had earned it. Had I worked enough, saved enough, helped enough, sacrificed enough? Only then could I relax. But life doesn't always give us a certificate saying, "Congratulations, you've sacrificed enough. You may now enjoy yourself." So I kept waiting. Then our sons grew up. Michael married. Daniel married. Grandchildren arrived. Richard and I had more time together. We talked about traveling. Nothing extravagant. A train trip, a few days at a lake, theater, restaurants we'd never tried. Sometimes we did those things. Often we said, "Maybe next year." There was always a reason. Something around the house. Someone in the family needed help. The timing wasn't right. We should save the money. Later. Later is a comfortable word. It makes you feel like you're not saying no. You're only postponing yes. Then Richard got sick. Not suddenly. At first there were appointments, then tests, then more appointments. Our world gradually became smaller. And eventually, when I was 67, Richard died. We had spent more than 4 decades together. Grief is strange. People describe it as sadness. Of course there is sadness, but there is also disorientation. For months, I would think of something and turn to tell Richard. Then remember. I'd hear something funny and think, "Wait until Richard hears this." Then remember. The house didn't only feel empty. It felt incorrect. For the first 2 years, I didn't want much. People invited me places. Sometimes I went. Often I didn't. My sons worried. I told them I was fine. Eventually something shifted. I didn't stop missing Richard. I still haven't. But grief changed shape. I started wanting things again. That surprised me. I wanted to go to a concert. I wanted to have dinner with friends. I wanted to take a weekend trip. I wanted to buy something simply because it was beautiful. And every time I felt excitement, guilt followed it. How can you enjoy yourself when Richard isn't here? The thought wasn't logical. Richard had loved seeing me happy. He would never have wanted me to spend the rest of my life punishing myself. I knew that. But guilt isn't always logical. Sometimes I would laugh with friends and suddenly think about him. The laughter would stop inside me. For a few seconds, happiness felt like betrayal, as if enjoying the life I still had meant I had forgotten the life we shared. So I became cautious with joy. Not deliberately. I just never gave myself too much of it. At 71, my sons invited me on a family beach vacation. Both families were going. 5 grandchildren, too much luggage, too much food, too much noise. It was wonderful. One afternoon, everyone was settled near the water. The grandchildren were playing. Michael and Daniel were talking. Their wives were reading. I sat in a beach chair facing the ocean. For perhaps 20 minutes, nobody needed anything from me. The sun was warm. The water was beautiful. I remember thinking, this is nice. Then came the guilt. Almost immediately. I looked around. There must be something I should be doing. So I stood up. I collected empty cups, folded towels, started putting snacks back into a bag. Michael looked at me. Mom, what are you doing? Just cleaning up. We're still here. I know. Sit down. I'm just helping. He shook his head. Nobody needs help. I don't know why those words bothered me. Nobody needs help. I sat back down, but I couldn't relax. If nobody needed anything from me, what exactly was I supposed to do? Just enjoy myself? That sounded simple. It wasn't. 2 years later, I found the blue coat. I wasn't looking for one. I was walking through a department store when I saw it. Deep blue, soft, simple. I tried it on. It fit beautifully. I looked at the tag. $186. Immediately, the old calculations began. You already own coats. This is unnecessary. $186 for something you don't need? I took it off. Walked away. Then came back. I tried it on again. A woman working nearby smiled. That color looks wonderful on you. I looked in the mirror. I liked it, really liked it. So I did something unusual. I bought it. Driving home, I felt excited for approximately 10 minutes. Then guilt took over. By the time I reached my house, I had already decided to return it. I hung the coat in my bedroom. I looked at the receipt 3 times that evening. $186. I could afford it. That was the ridiculous part. No debt, no unpaid bills. My retirement income was stable. I had savings. Nobody needed that money. Still, I felt as if I had done something irresponsible. Michael called that evening. We talked for a while. Then, for some reason, I mentioned the coat. I'm probably taking it back. Why? It was $186. There was a pause. Can you afford it? Yes. Do you like it? Yes. Do you need another coat? No. He laughed. That wasn't my question. I know. Then he asked, Mom, if you like it and you can afford it, who exactly are you feeling guilty toward? I didn't answer. He continued. Are you worried Daniel and I are going to be upset? No. Are the grandchildren going without food? Of course not. Then keep the coat. After we hung up, I stood in my bedroom looking at it. Who exactly are you feeling guilty toward? I genuinely didn't know. A few days later, I told my friend Barbara. Barbara was 74. We had known each other for years. She had a way of asking questions that made me regret telling her things. I think I'm returning the coat. Why? It's expensive. Can you afford it? Apparently, everyone had decided to interrogate me. Yes. Do you like it? Yes. Then why are we discussing this? I don't need it. Barbara took a sip of coffee. Then she asked, Diane, when did enjoyment become something you had to defend? I stared at her. What? You've given me 5 reasons why you shouldn't have something you enjoy. I'm being practical. Maybe. Then she said, but when did enjoying something become a courtroom case? I laughed. But the question followed me home. When did enjoyment become something I had to defend? I started noticing how often I did it. If I ordered dessert, I skipped lunch. If I spent an afternoon reading, I cleaned the house first. If I bought flowers, they were on sale. If I went somewhere, someone invited me. There was always an explanation, a defense, a reason. I couldn't simply say, I wanted to. That sentence felt selfish. Then one afternoon, while sorting old paperwork, I found an envelope. Richard's handwriting was on the front. One word, Someday. I sat down on the floor. I remembered the envelope immediately. Years earlier, Richard and I used to put travel brochures and little ideas inside it. Places we might go, things we might do. Someday, I opened it. A brochure for a train trip through the Canadian Rockies. A schedule from a theater. A card from a lakeside hotel. Several restaurant advertisements. Some of those things we eventually did. Many we didn't. I smiled at first. Then I felt that familiar ache. Richard should have had more time. We should have had more time. At the bottom of the envelope was a small piece of paper. Richard had written, "We should stop saving everything for later." I read it twice, then again. I sat there holding that little note. He had written it years before he became sick. I don't even remember why, but suddenly I could hear him saying it. We should stop saving everything for later. I thought about the blue coat hanging upstairs, about the concert Barbara had mentioned, about all the times I said, "That's unnecessary, too expensive, maybe another time." And I asked myself something. If I keep refusing joy now, who exactly am I saving it for? I was 73. I hoped I had many years ahead. But Richard had taught me something neither of us wanted to learn. Time isn't guaranteed because you behaved responsibly. You don't receive extra years because you denied yourself dessert. Still, this wasn't only about time. I had another problem. Even when I chose something enjoyable, I felt guilty afterward. So I decided to start small. I went upstairs, took the blue coat from the bag, put it on. I stood in front of the mirror. The old question came first. Do you need this? No. Then I tried another question. Do you enjoy this? Yes. That answer felt strangely difficult to accept. I took the receipt and threw it away. The coat was staying. I waited for something bad to happen. Nothing did. No emergency arrived because Diane owned a blue coat. My children did not become poorer. My grandchildren did not suffer. The electricity remained on. Life continued. And I began to understand something almost embarrassing. The only person punishing me for enjoying myself was me. A few weeks later, Barbara invited me to a concert. The ticket was $94. I checked. Of course I checked. Then there was dinner, parking. Immediately, my mind began calculating. I almost said no. Then I noticed what I was doing. Could I afford it? Yes. Did I want to go? Yes. So I said yes. I wore the blue coat. Barbara noticed immediately. You kept it. I did. Miracles happen. Don't start. The concert was wonderful. I found myself singing quietly during one song. Barbara heard me, unfortunately. Afterward, we had dinner. I ordered what I wanted, not the cheapest thing on the menu, not the most expensive either, just what I wanted. Driving home, I realized something. Several hours had passed, and for most of them, I hadn't felt guilty. That mattered more than the concert. I had simply enjoyed myself. No justification, no apology, no sacrifice before or afterward to balance the scales. Just enjoyment. That was new. But guilt doesn't disappear because you defeat it once. It came back. Sometimes over money, sometimes over time, sometimes because Richard wasn't there. I had to keep questioning it. One Sunday, Michael came to visit. I immediately started cooking. Too much, as usual. Then I cleaned the kitchen while he sat at the table. I started packing food for him to take home. He laughed. Mom. What? Sit down. I'm making this for you. I don't need anything. I know. Then stop. I looked at him. Why did you come? He stared at me, then laughed. To see you? Something about that answer touched me. Not for food, not because he needed laundry done, not because he needed money, not because I could solve a problem. To see me. For years, I had connected love with usefulness. If I was giving, I was loving. If I was sacrificing, I was loving. If I was putting someone else first, I was loving. But maybe the people I loved didn't need me to suffer as proof. Maybe Michael didn't need a tired mother standing in the kitchen. Maybe he wanted me sitting across from him. So I sat. The food could wait. That sounds small. Most changes are. Then I decided to try something that felt much larger. One Saturday entirely for myself. No family plans, no errands unless I wanted them, no cleaning before I left. That last rule was surprisingly difficult. I woke up, saw dishes in the sink, almost washed them. Then I said aloud, later. I put on the blue coat, went out for breakfast, alone. I ordered coffee and eggs. I didn't rush. Then I went to an art museum. I spent as long as I wanted in each room. Nobody was waiting. Afterward, I walked through a bookstore. I bought one book, not because I needed it, because I wanted to read it. Then I bought coffee and sat in a park. Several times that day, the old voice returned. Shouldn't you be doing something? Is this necessary? Couldn't this money be used for something better? This time, I answered, it doesn't have to be necessary. I actually whispered it once. A woman walking past probably thought I was talking to myself. She was correct. It doesn't have to be necessary. That sentence became important to me. Some things need to be useful. A washing machine, a medication, a good pair of shoes. But not every beautiful thing in life needs to justify itself. Music doesn't have to be necessary. A sunset doesn't have to be productive. Coffee with a friend doesn't need an outcome. Laughter doesn't need to accomplish anything. Neither does every hour of my life. For decades, I had treated pleasure as something I could have only after every responsibility was satisfied. The problem is that responsibility is never completely finished. There will always be another dish, another bill, another person who might need something. If joy always comes last, sometimes it never comes at all. Then my 73rd birthday arrived. My sons asked what I wanted. Normally, I would have said, nothing, or don't spend money on me. I almost did. Instead, I said, I want us all to have dinner together. Michael paused. That's it? At a nice restaurant. He laughed. Who are you? And what have you done with our mother? We all went. Michael, Daniel, their wives, my 5 grandchildren. The table was loud. Someone spilled water. One grandchild complained about the food. Another ate half of my dessert. It was perfect. When the bill came, Michael and Daniel reached for it. I immediately said, No, I'll pay for mine. Michael looked at me. Mom, I can pay. We know, Daniel said. Let us. My instinct was to protest. Accepting generosity had always made me uncomfortable too. Then I stopped. Thank you. That was all. Thank you. No argument. No guilt. Dessert arrived with a candle. Everyone sang. I looked around the table. For decades, I had thought love was mostly about what I gave, what I cooked, what I saved, what I postponed, what I gave up. That night, love was coming toward me. Dinner, a candle, a granddaughter leaning against my shoulder, my sons insisting I let them pay. And I finally understood that receiving love doesn't make you selfish. Enjoying what someone gives you doesn't create a debt. You can simply receive. I'm still careful with money. I want to make that clear. I didn't turn 73 and decide to spend my savings recklessly. I still compare prices. I still use coupons. I still think $6 for a cup of coffee is ridiculous. Some beliefs are permanent. But I stopped treating every pleasure like a moral failure. Sometimes I buy flowers, not because someone is visiting. For me. Sometimes I order dessert. Sometimes I spend an afternoon reading before the house is clean. Sometimes Barbara and I go somewhere simply because it sounds enjoyable. And when I hear myself say, I shouldn't, I try to finish the sentence. Why shouldn't I? Sometimes there is a good answer. Maybe it's too expensive. Maybe I promised someone something. Maybe I'm tired. Fine. But often there is no answer. Only habit. Only guilt. Only a rule I learned decades ago and never bothered to question. At 73, I can finally see where that rule came from. For almost 50 years, sacrifice had been part of my identity. Some of those sacrifices were necessary. Some were beautiful. Some were acts of love I would gladly repeat. But somewhere along the way, I started believing sacrifice itself made me a better person. As if denying myself proved something. As if happiness needed to be earned through discomfort. As if every good moment required payment. I don't believe that anymore. I thought enjoying my life meant I was taking something away from someone else. But my happiness was never stealing from the people I loved. Michael and Daniel don't need a miserable mother to prove she cared for them. My grandchildren don't become better people because Grandma refuses every pleasure. And Richard would not consider my happiness a betrayal. I know what he would say. Diane, enjoy the dinner. Take the trip. Keep the coat. I wish he were here to say those things. But missing him and enjoying my life can exist together. That's another lesson grief taught me. I can love the life we had and still love parts of the life I have now. One doesn't erase the other. Last winter, I put on that blue coat and met Barbara for breakfast. It was cold, the kind of morning when your breath hangs in the air. After breakfast, Barbara suggested we walk through a nearby park. Normally, I might have said, "It's too cold." Instead, we went. The sun was out. Bare trees stretched across a pale sky. We walked slowly. At 73, nobody is trying to set a speed record. At one point, I looked down. The sleeve of my blue coat caught the winter light, and I remembered standing in my bedroom with the receipt. $186. I remembered the guilt, the calculations, the plan to return it. I waited for that old feeling to appear. It didn't. Instead, I thought, I'm glad I kept it. That was all. 4 simple words. I'm glad I kept it. No explanation followed. No defense. No guilt. I smiled. Barbara noticed. What? Nothing. That's suspicious, I laughed. And we kept walking. At 73, I finally understand something that took me nearly 50 years to learn. Joy does not always have to be earned through sacrifice. You don't have to finish every task first. You don't have to give something up. You don't have to prove you've been useful enough. You don't have to apologize because your life contains something beautiful. Sometimes you can buy the coat. Sometimes you can order dessert. Sometimes you can sit down while someone else washes the dishes. Sometimes you can let your children buy dinner. Sometimes you can laugh even though someone you loved is no longer there to laugh with you. And sometimes a good moment is allowed to be exactly that. A good moment. I spent most of my life making room for everyone else's happiness. I don't regret that, love. But now I know there was always room for mine, too. And if there is one thing I wish I had understood sooner, it is this. You don't have to suffer first to deserve the life you're still here to enjoy. If you've spent years putting everyone else first, I'd love to know when you finally gave yourself permission to enjoy something just for you. Maybe it was a trip, a quiet afternoon, a dinner, or even something as simple as a new coat. Share your experience in the comments. Your story may help someone else realize that enjoying life doesn't make them selfish. And if you'd like to hear more reflections about aging, family, loss, regret, and the lessons we sometimes learn too late, subscribe and join me again for the next story.